Good day to you all. My first option would have been to be with you in person today, to talk to you live and to interact with you. As this has not been possible, I'm using my second best option, which is to be with you in bits and pixels. First off, I wish to thank our host, Professor Fathi Lisir, Director of the Medneen Higher Institute of Applied Studies and Humanities. My thanks also go to the organizers, my colleagues, Professor Munir Triki, Grad Director, and Dr. Abel Qalal of the University of Kairouan. I know I'm deprived of the chance to take questions and comments from the audience, but I'd be happy to respond to any email messages. My name is Ali Hashmi Raddawi. I'm an Associate Professor of Applied Linguistics at the College of Letters and Humanities of Sfax, University of Sfax, Tunisia. My talk is entitled ICT-Based Learning and Implications for Assessment. Here, I'm talking for the most part about a virtual world, a world that I've started to explore for the past 2 years or so. This is the world of online teaching. Or is it online learning? And the difference in wording implies a difference in focus and almost a 180-degree shift in pedagogical practices long prevalent in the educational field. In the main, my talk is about changes that are sweeping the educational landscape in all manner of things. Before I give you a preview of the journey I wish to take you on during the best part of 25 minutes, I'd like to give you a foretaste of this type of change as I am experiencing it. I've been teaching a course entitled English Language Teaching, ELT for short, to my fourth-year students at the College of Letters and Humanities of Sfax for the past 3 years. You know that the normal lifespan of a course before it undergoes any major reshuffle is about 3 years. In addition to have made the course available online, there was naturally the need to shorten my lectures from 30-odd PowerPoint presentation slides to something like 15 slides. This is not the time to explain why. Now I wish to talk about another important change that is relevant for this talk. The exam format that I have followed for the past 2 years was the following. I would choose an English language teaching manual, let's say the English textbook used for the 9th year basic education, and I would give the students the preface, the table of contents, and a sample lesson. The question would be, based on your class lectures, readings, and life experience, try to identify and explain the type of syllabus followed by the textbook authors. For this year, though, I have been thinking about changing the format of the exam. Instead of providing students with a teaching manual that they want to make a commentary upon, I've been thinking of turning the exam into a product-oriented exercise in which students would themselves design a syllabus for a certain level of proficiency following the requirements of the functional notional syllabus, for example. In addition, I would ask students to play the role of a textbook writer and produce a sample unit or portions thereof. Now let me outline this talk. This presentation is something of a projection into the future of schooling in Tunisia to fall in line with ICT-based instruction prevalent in other parts of the world. I begin with a description of ICT-based instruction paradigm. Then I proceed to a comparison between traditional assessment based on face-to-face instruction and ICT-based assessment. I conclude with the major hurdles in the way of instituting this type of assignment from the standpoints of content managers, learners, and the educational providers in a general sense. Let me begin with what I call the shape of ICT-based learning. This has four main features, and I'll be talking about each one of them in turn. First feature of ICT-based learning is the learning management system. Secondly, there's the social constructionist view of learning. Another important part of ICT-based learning is social software, and finally I'll be talking also about mobile learning. Let's begin with the virtual learning environment, so-called VLEs or Content Management System, CMS. Here's a definition that I've taken from Holyoke 2002. A virtual learning environment is a set of teaching and learning tools designed to enhance a student's learning experience by including computers and the internet in the learning process. Basically, what the virtual learning environment consists in is a password-protected space hosted by a remote server where learners enroll in a course and act as a community, and of course try to complete the assignments for the course. What are the functionalities of the virtual learning environment? The very first thing is that the instructor provides the full course contents. He or she then divides the course contents into weeks or topics and sets schedules of activities and assignments. Another role for the instructor would be to monitor learners' progress and to give timely notifications and feedback on that progress. What is the nature of the resources available in a virtual learning environment? These are diversified. You have resources of a text type, PDF, PowerPoint, HTML, pictures. You can also include cartoons, audio recordings, video recordings, and all types of multimedia in general. It is also interesting to look at the nature of the assignments and activities that students are asked to take on. These are activities to be completed by each student on their own, but there is always the possibility that these assignments be completed in pair or in groups. Very often the teacher also assigns an activity in the form of a forum, a chat, a wiki, or a blog. I'll be talking a little bit about this later. Here are some examples of virtual learning environments, our content management systems. There's Moodle, which is an open source platform, learning platform, NiceNet, Blackboard, WebCT, Sakai, among many, many others. Okay, now let me talk a little bit about the social constructionist view of learning, which is one of the major characteristics of virtual learning environments, especially Moodle. I'll begin with a definition of constructionism as it is given by Crotty, 1998. Constructionism is the view that all knowledge, and therefore all meaningful reality as such, is contingent upon human practices being constructed in and out of interaction between human beings and their world, and developed and transmitted within an essentially social context. What this means is that online learning environments give learners a chance to grapple with the material individually. This is the constructivist part of it. The argument then goes on to say that much of our understanding of reality is the result of group and social interaction. This would mean that without society and culture, the individual is more like a blind or visually impaired person who is not able to assign meaning to what he or she sees. Meaning is thus considered to be collectively generated and transmitted. Applying this to the virtual learning environments, we will say that the making of meaning is made possible via what is often called social software or participatory media, and this is my next point. Well, what is social software? Here's a definition I've taken from Wikipedia. Social software is is a software running on an individual's computer or website with which users can create personal profiles, form groups, and exchange messages. They, that is, users, can also rate each other and so build reputations. Social software, this is another definition taken from Wikipedia, the first being taken from the Higher Education Academy, the UK Higher Education Academy. Social software, says Wikipedia, enables people to rendezvous, connect, or collaborate through computer-mediated communication. What we have to keep in mind in this context, or in this regard, is that instead of the one-to-many type of communication, which is characteristic of the classroom, where the teacher treats students as indistinguishable building blocks, social software provides the opportunity for its members to construct their own profiles, to build communities of interest, and to engage in informal one-to-many and many-to-many communication. I think unfortunately, we do not have much time to go through all of these types of social softwares, but I encourage all of you guys to go in and to experiment with these. The first one is www.myspace.com. Another one to try out is facebook.com. Twitter is an interesting social software where people are always on the go and they help each other with answering questions and giving information as per need. LinkedIn.com is a website for people who are in the business and industry, who are in business and industry, and who wish to consult each other on many aspects and to consider that each one represents a resource for the others. Second Life is now the major talking point in virtual learning environments and otherwise, and it's something that we have to experiment with. I have not so far been able to do that, but I think it is something that we want to go into if we want to find out more about the shape of future learning environments. Well, I said that mobile learning is also one of the major features of virtual learning environments and of ICT-enriched instruction in general. What is mobile learning? Another name for mobile learning is M-learning and also U-learning. U for ubiquitous learning. Well, what this assumes is that learning takes place or can take place anywhere, anytime. I have produced a list of places, but I don't know that these are comprehensive or exhaustive. But normally you can learn while eating, while you're entertaining yourself, watching games, surfing the internet, watching TV, jogging, working out, attending a party or function, cycling, driving, walking or commuting, while you are in bed, sleeping, while sleeping and while waiting. Basically, it's learning anytime, anywhere. The major thing to be remembered about mobile learning is that this seems to coincide with the decline of desktop computers as being the application mostly used in the late 80s and early 90s, and the coming into currency of handheld or portable storage and communication devices. Many of you today are using laptops, mobile phones, notebook computers, palm computers, iPods, and iPhones. These handheld devices are making learning available on a mobile basis. You need not be seated at your table, at your desk, in your office, but you can learn basically anywhere. Okay, now I'd like to start a comparison between traditional assessment and ICT-based assessment, and this comparison begins with an identification of the features of traditional assessment. First of all, what traditional assessment does is to bring all examinees into one closely monitored physical environment, and this submits them to a time-bounded competition. Basically, all students or learners are brought into the same classroom, and there they are made to undergo the exam, if you wish. This exam is prepared by one to many. It is prepared by one teacher or maybe by two teachers, and it is meant to be delivered or administered to many students. So what the exam does is to treat all learners indiscriminately, which means that no room is made for individual differences or multiple intelligences. There are times when we see this at our own college, that this exam does not make allowance for students with disabilities or students who are not healthy on that particular day. In the examination classroom, all interaction is completely banned among exam takers. This communication prevents the use of extra classroom resources, so you cannot call somebody to find the answer. You cannot access the internet for most examinations. What this practice assumes is an extreme view of knowledge as being a strictly individual creation. On the other hand, this exam, which is prepared by one teacher for all students, is also targeted for the teacher. When this exam is targeted for one person or two persons, two teachers, what it does is to discourage the notion of writing for a target readership. Students are not writing or answering questions to be read by the community, by the public, by a readership of one type or another, but the exam answers are often tailor-made to suit the teachers, and I believe this puts a sort of a check on the learner's creativity, and this is because examinations are to be inspected, examined, and marked only by teachers. Okay, I'm still on with the traditional features, with the features of traditional assessment, and often I think it is fair to say that any kind of examination that we give in the traditional setup is one occasion for a reproductive act. This means that the educational system is still built on memorization and rote learning. Students take the course to identify teacher marking criteria, and then they often reproduce the teacher's exact wording. They know that by doing so, the teacher is going to be kept sweet, and they are very likely to receive a passing or a higher than passing grade. Often, another feature of traditional assessment is that they are pen and paper-based assessments, which creates an unhealthy and incorrect view of work as being a uniform product of words. What students do is to write words, to write sentences, but nowadays what people are called upon to produce is more, very often more than words. I think one of the most sore features of traditional assessment is that they are destined for archiving after marking. Well, we have thousands upon thousands of students taking examinations and investing man-hours of work and a lot of effort. This effort is, of course, submitted to scrutiny on the part of teacher. The teacher, what the teacher does is to evaluate the work, assign a mark to it, and then I would say that all the work produced by students is taken to the burial ground. I have come across very, very few situations where exam papers are requested by another teacher for the purposes of analysis, reevaluation, and critique. My conclusion from an analysis of the features of traditional assessment is that this traditional assessment is often summative and is rarely formative. It is reproductive, and it is almost destructive of creativity. I conclude this section here with a quotation from the Center of the Study of Higher Education 2008, which is to say that the move to online and computer-based assessment is a natural outcome of the increasing use of information and communication technologies to enhance learning. As more students seek flexibility in their courses, it seems inevitable that there will be growing expectations for flexible assessment as well. We are now going to try and explore the nature of this flexible assessment, the nature of this new type of assessment. It is basically, well, these features basically consist in saying that the product that students will be called upon to produce in the ICT type setup is one that is oriented toward a consumer other than the teacher, that is. The assessment that students will be taking will be a collaborative product, collaboratively authored product, and very often it will also be a cyber-hosted product. I will now take a little time to talk about each of these three features. What do we mean that by saying that the product will be consumer-oriented? The product, the kind of work done in the assessment organized in VLEs. Instead of having the teacher as the main evaluator, which is the situation in traditional assessment, we now have other parties also participating in the evaluation. And when I talk about other parties, I mean people such as learners, the teacher, other teachers, the administrations, parents, learning partners, peers, sponsoring organizations, researchers, and the like. What happens also is that learners are often asked to work on projects or problems. This makes reference to project-based learning or problem-based learning. And in that case, the work that students produce is accessible to a wider public than the teacher, him or herself. And of course, because the product is oriented toward the customer, there is a necessity that the work be aesthetically pleasing, and it will have to contain a lot of multimedia. That is, in addition to words, other things such as pictures or audio files or audio-video files, etc., etc. But what do we mean by a collaboratively authored product? Here I give you a very, very quick preview of different activities that students engage in the VLEs. Students will be doing chatting, they will be answering questions and developing topics in the forum. They will write blogs and they will write wikis. Well, what's a wiki? In learning management system, a wiki is an assignment in whose elaborations all students are asked to collaborate. The final work bears, therefore, the marks of individual students as well as the whole class. All students have the right to add to, comment upon, and edit what is written in a wiki space. So this is a new practice whereby students are having a common assignment and they will all answer the same assignment and they will come up with a product that represents the collective effort of all of the minds combined. Well, another characteristic of assessment in the new paradigm, in the new ICT-enriched learning setup, is that it is cyber-hosted. This is a cyber-hosted product. Here I want to bring in the notion of productizing, which was made by Walker 2007. Instead of the work that students always do in traditional assignments, which is doomed to oblivion and archiving, ICT-enriched work can serve as the alpha version of a product that learners can decide to turn into a product destined for the market. Well, let's say that students have been asked to solve a problem or to come up with a particular product or to set up to create a website. That website is not just an exercise that is doomed for oblivion and that is considered to be just object of marking, but it can be turned into a product. Students can actually make an effort in order to turn this into something that is marketable. The other feature of cyber-hosted products is what I call versioning, or process production. What I mean by this is that in new models of writing, for example, we talk about process writing, which means that the focus is on the product, but it's almost and it's also and mostly on the process of production itself. So students go through a number of versions or a number of drafts, draft 1, draft 2, until they reach the final draft. It would be the same when the product is based in the cyber world. That product can be that product can be subjected to versioning and can be subjected to improvement. So we'll have a first draft, and when this is complete, there will be subsequent opportunities for improvement. Hence, the disappearance of the notion of a finished product. The other characteristic of cyber-hosted products is that they can enjoy or benefit by viewer and user feedback. Remember that in traditional assessment, evaluation was the teacher's exclusive right. In ICT-based assessment or environments, the viewers, all viewers and all users are free to produce comments and feedback. Another characteristic of cyber-hosted products is that these do not require the presence of all students and all learners in the same physical environments. Here we have geographically dispersed learners in many counties or in many parts of the country, or even in different parts of the world, and each one of them will be adding the richness, something of the richness of their own environment, the network of relationships that they have, and the life experiences that are characteristic of that learner, all added from a geographically different positions. Well, I think I'm done now with a comparison between what I call traditional assessment and ICT-based assessment. And here I want to come up very quickly to the last section, which is the conclusion, where I'll be talking about the main challenges in the face of the main hurdles in the face of the implementation of an ICT-based assessment program. I summarize these in 3 points. The first is teacher retraining, and something also has to be done about the student mindset, and then of course it will be a problem. It will always be a perennial problem of equipment and infrastructure. Something to be said about teacher retraining in the context of ICT-based assessment and ICT-based learning. Teachers have to take on new roles that are appropriate for the new environment, which is an ICT environment. The teacher was often the content feeder, but now he or she has to manage it in such a manner that he or she will be a content manager rather than somebody whose sole job is to spoon feed the students. The teacher was traditionally also the center of the classroom, and so we often talk about teacher-centered classrooms or teacher-centered instructions. And now the teacher will have to move possibly to the periphery. So he's from somebody who used to operate as a class master, he or she will have to turn into an activity organizer, and instead of the authoritative figure that he or she used to play, he or she is now called upon to play the role of a facilitator. And lastly, instead of being the sole judge on what quality was, we are now going to have somebody who is going to be one among many who will have a say on what quality means, but the final say will not necessarily be theirs. In relation to student mindset, what are the requirements for students to be able to transfer from the paradigm of somebody who is used to receiving information to someone who is going to be a creator, an author of knowledge? So from the empty receptacle metaphor destined for filling, the student will have to turn into an active member of the learning community. That student was always dependent on the teacher, but now the student has to start playing the role of a researcher and producer in the making. I think with reference to our environment in Tunisia, possibly, well, my concern is that students have always played the part of obedient note takers, and now with the new paradigm we're going to ask them to be creators and communicators. From peripheral elements in the learning process, they now have to become a driving force. I now come to the last point in relation to the hurdles in the face of or in the way of implementing an ICT-enriched learning environment, and this is the perennial problem, the big headache of equipment and infrastructure. I would say that much of my talk, this whole projection, this whole project that I have been talking about, this whole presentation would remain futile if the following provisions are not taken care of. First of all, there has to be a provision of the hardware and software at a level that is that matches what is available in developed countries. Secondly, there will have to be a need for intensive teacher education programs in this direction. And of course, along with teaching and learning, along with the activities that take place in the classroom, in face-to-face situations, as well as in online learning environments, there has to be a shift toward implementing an ICT-sensitive assessment, because it is no use trying to implement a new assessment when in fact the way you teach has not changed. And lastly, perhaps of all the researches that indicate an interesting orientation, much research has to be conducted in order to discuss how the implementation of online learning is going to proceed in Tunisia. I think I would like to leave you with this final thought. When we talk about assessment and evaluation, when we talk about examination and testing, we are always concerned as teachers about the fact that what is written is a representation of the student's work and the student's own work. That is, we want to make sure that students do not have access to anybody else when they are writing the exam answers. In the new paradigm, in the new teaching context of virtual learning environments, many students will be possibly writing the answers to examinations from their own home, from the library, in the presence of their peers, and while communicating with other parts, with people in other parts of the world, and certainly while having access to the internet. In that case, we will say that this student is no longer producing work that is exactly representative of himself, of him or herself. Now, to what extent is the question of trust immaterial nowadays? This is something that we might want to talk about at a future time. Well, thank you very, very much. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and sorry I can't take your questions today. Thank you.